The single most important story in the city of St. Petersburg right now is right here. Our mayor is in turmoil after $200,000 has left his campaign account in, quote, unauthorized expenditures. Now, the reason why this is so important is it's just another example of a gross line of incompetence and failures that we've seen out of this administration, and it hurts every single one of us. There's nothing that impacts you and I as citizens, impacts our children, impacts our families more than what happens at the local level. And we've seen a level of incompetence out of this mayor that is breathtaking. It's absolutely staggering. It started at the very beginning. It's only continued throughout his entire administration. Initially on, people were kind of quiet about it. I guess they wanted to be respectful. There was a little delicacy there, people being delicate about things. But now it's all been on full display for the entire administration from the very beginning. And it's time to talk about it black and white and bluntly. But again, the latest one as of yesterday is everyone started hearing whispers that Welch's campaign was in trouble because they had lots of money. Now, first of all, it's astonishing to me that the guy's able to raise $200,000 in the most inept campaign that I've ever heard from. And the way campaigns work is, if you've spent a couple years in office, you start picking up the phone and calling people and saying, hey, I'm running again. I need some campaign money. And I just can't imagine who this guy would be calling that would actually be giving money. But there is some input into that coming down here in this story. The largest contributor during this period was one check for $25,000 that was given by the Rays to Welch. No other contribution was more than $2,500. So the Rays are the big endorsers of this guy, and not surprising, I guess, because they got this sweetheart deal. So let's talk about what happened with this stupid stadium deal. But in order to do that, we got to go back to the beginning. If you remember, Kreisman had done a pretty darn exceptional job in this city. Lots of things that people can disagree with, but when Kreisman was in office, it was the absolute apex of our city. We were the shining city on the hill. We were getting national, international attention from arts, from travel, from business leaders. On the wonky side of things, the finances were some of the best in the entire country of any medium-sized city in the entire country. All this was done under Kreisman. And Kreisman had spent years working on a raise deal with a very competent staff, including economic development staff who had been around forever, who knew business, knew what they knew, importantly, knew what they didn't know. So they hired in experts that were grinding hard, doing a really good deal. And he had a decent deal on the table. But what happens? Welch comes in and he takes that deal and he just rips it up and throws it out the window. And I'll never forget sitting here on this press conference. At that point in time, I was a supporter. Like many people, I had contributed to Welch's campaign. I was a supporter of his campaign. We all hoped he was going to do great things. He talked a great talk at the front end. He's just disappeared from everybody instantly upon taking office. But I remember standing there over by the Rays while he made this announcement. And what he was saying was that he didn't like the deal. He was going to make it better. And that's when we really started hearing this equity inclusion conversation at the front end, which became the mantra throughout this entire ridiculous campaign with this new Rays stadium. But he ripped up, scrapped, threw out the window a perfectly acceptable deal that Kreisman had put together. Had he done the right thing, he would have continued with that deal. We would have been well along the way towards getting a deal done. We wouldn't have the debacle of the roof off and the hundreds of millions of dollars spent, wasted, blown on that stupid tarp and then put a new one on there. That is a flaming pile and a disaster there, and it's because of the gross incompetence of this guy right here. But that's not the only one. There's another one that I want to talk about that in my mind is even more despicable and disgusting as an example of why we have such an incompetent mayor in Welch. So there's a piece of vacant dirt just a couple blocks from there. And that vacant dirt had been there forever. A part of it was city-owned land that wasn't doing anything. It's just a junky parking lot. And Moffitt Cancer Center comes along and they say, we want to bring a research and a treatment facility into St. Petersburg. and they had a pretty darn good deal. It included representations of housing. It included proposals for I don't know how many jobs, hundreds of jobs. There was going to be well-paid jobs of researchers, of physicians, and was really going to be a cornerstone of this community in the growth of a medical and a research development park. Well, Welch comes in and starts making demands of the developers. There were, X number of housing units, subsidized housing units that were demanded, and the developers went back to the drawing board and they said, "All right, we can. Okay, here it is, right here. Yeah, 10% affordable housing." And they said, "All right, we can add a little bit more in there," and they went back up to 15%, and then they went to 17%, and people think developers, got all kinds of money. They're making money. That's just not the case anymore, particularly now. But even then, what happens is, developers have to build something, and the numbers have to work. Well, this shovel-ready project with very experiencing developers that knew exactly what they were doing and going to bring a cancer center to this community. Welch kept going back to them and demanding more and more, and the bottom line is they pulled the plug. They had to pull the plug because of Welch's incompetence, and he had nothing to put behind that. It's one thing if you are negotiating and you say, "Look, I want X housing units, affordable housing units," and they can't do it because that somebody else is behind you and they're going to produce that X. He didn't, so he killed it. He killed the deal. So here's the deal. That Moffitt Cancer Center story is just one of many. And what anybody to be campaigning for mayor is going to be doing is just kind of lining up the top 10 worst things that Welch has done to this city. I could just rattle them off one right after the other. I mean, we know the Welch piles after the hurricane, right? He has no excuse for that. Mayors one after the other during hurricanes. We're at the emergency management center with staff and whatever else. Welch is hiding somewhere. We don't know where he is. And then in the weeks and months after that hurricane, of course, he just abandoned everybody and did nothing. But again, maybe top on my list is this Moffitt Cancer Center thing and how he failed us. But back to the major story today and $200,000 missing. We are currently in a state where they're talking about a new development proposal. I'll put this one up here right now. So the city spent untold hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions, in considering what they were going to do with the Rays Stadium site. Completely failed. And we lost all that money, all that time, all those resources that could have been devoted towards solving problems for citizens. But here we are in 26, and Welch is telling us that he's got a new deal that he wants to put together. Now, we can get into the details on that. It's insane, very problematic, very suspicious, because this deal pops up out of the blue. Welch announces that it's the one that's going to go forward, and every other developer standing around, legitimate, good people that know what they're doing, saying, "Wait a minute, where did this come from?" But the point of all this is that his argument that he's the guy that's going to get something done is offensive, given his background, given his track record, and how he has failed us so miserably throughout his entire campaign. And shout out here to City Council. The problem I have with City Council, and all of us should be aware of this, is that rather than City Council being an effective check on what this joker was doing, rather than City Council holding his feet to the fire, someone on City Council early on recognizing this guy's a problem, and I, as a City Council member, I'm going to really distance myself from it, and I'm going to start sticking up for constituents and taxpayers and saying we're going to do something real in this city. City Council's largely just kind of fallen into line and adopted this proposition that we're going to do what Welch wants us to do. I've got this well-researched, very developed proposition out there that City Council needs to be independent, including hiring their own attorney. The city charter authorizes the city to hire their own attorney, and frankly, not having their own attorney at this point in time amounts to malpractice, government malpractice on the part of our elected officials, City Council members. But the deal is this, people. Follow this story about the $200,000 that's missing. Maybe this will get us where we really need to be, which is Welch stepping down, getting out of here so we can get some competent management in this city, even before the election.